Hey, welcome back, guys. The Snowfall Series Finale was the best definition of tragic for our series lead. Taking place over a time span of 3¼ years, the main protagonist turned tyrant is forced to come to terms with his sins against his family, friends, and community, ending up in one of the most surprisingly heartbreaking conclusions of any series bearing such critical acclaim and fanfare. I'm here to break it all down in typical Top 10 WTF fashion. Before we begin, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and bell notification to immediately receive these videos. Also, big thank you to all of my channel donors. If you'd like to be the next one, drop $1 on that Cash App for us. And lastly, a spoiler alert is now in effect for all things Snowfall. Here we go. WTF moment number 10, unfinished business. In the direct aftermath of Teddy's murder, Franklin gets a page from the CIA. Speaking to Havermeyer directly, the government representative threatens to lock Saint away forever unless he hands over Ruben immediately. Left with no money, options, or hope, Franklin returns to the stash house and knocks out Ruben. Then, he transports the rogue KGB man to the agreed-upon location and shakily leaves him to a gory fate out of fear of his own safety and security post Teddy's demise. Ruben releases his final pleas for liberation before being picked up by the government agency, never to be seen or heard from again. WTF moment number 9, life raft. A desperate Franklin meets with Leon at the projects and begs his oldest friend for more money on top of the $500K he already owes. Leon informs him that he has nearly $3 million left upon Saint's inquiry, and the latter goes on an entitled ramble about plans for money that's not his. Seeing the erratic nature of his closest friend and wanting to uphold the desires of his surrogate mother, Lee denies Franklin another loan. Saint goes ballistic hearing this response, mirroring the performance he once put on for his Aunt Louie in the finale of Season 5, this time with much less fanfare or support. Outnumbered in the midst of the suggested robbery attempt, Saint leaves the fortress of his comrade, having been denied access to the funds for a second time. WTF moment number 8, a threat and a promise. Franklin is visited by Paul Davis, who surprisingly inquires about his stake in the downtown Spring Street property. Learning of V's part in the attempted sale from Mr. Davis, he subsequently pays his wife a heated visit and G-checks her behind the subversion. Then, he one-ups her maneuver by informing her of the sale of all of their South Central properties without her consent. Shocked and appalled by such an erratic decision, V then comes face-to-face with the monster Franklin has become as he chokes her in retaliation prior to departing. This will be their final meeting together before the shocking event to follow. WTF moment number 7, disappearing acts. Franklin stops by the bank, fresh off the whiskey, to make business plans for his account going forward. However, much to his surprise and dismay, he learns that Veronique had already stopped by the bank and made a major cash withdrawal, essentially running off with the remainder of Franklin's capital, leaving him penniless. Saint is blown away by the revelation and descends further into alcoholism and despair as a result. WTF moment number 6, desperate disrespect. Saint visits his mother for a second time, this go-round more mentally detached than the last. He informs a silent Cissy on V's departure and subsequently begs his mother to assist in selling her home, which Franklin bought for her back when the getting was good. Maintaining the vernacular of silence when being approached by her son, Cissy hangs her head in shame and soon follows with the phone itself. Franklin, now at the zenith of rage, lashes out harshly at his mother in a way only hinted at in past seasons. He blames her for ruining his life, declares Teddy should have killed her along with his father, and most unforgivably calls his mother outside of her Christian name. A disappointed Cissy then leaves her son for the last time as prison guards arrive to remove him as the obscenities continue to fly. WTF moment number 5, Saint and the Hiding Peach. Franklin is contacted by Top Notch 3 months later and notified that the former Panther will no longer work for the fledgling former drug lord. He does, however, leave Saint with another proverbial light at the end of the tunnel by exposing the true whereabouts of none other than Peaches, Franklin's former bodyguard turned junkie who robbed him of 5 M's a season ago and subsequently fled. With eyes wide and at the brink of desperation's bridge, Franklin infiltrates Peach's compound and finds his once solid gunman laid out on the couch, coming down from one of his many crack binges. After gleefully greeting his old boss, Tensions soon thicken as Franklin demands what's left of his stolen funds. Peaches feigns compliance, but predictably attempts to kill Franklin, only to be murdered himself in the process. Saint then finds the safe mentioned by his slain former security, but is unable to crack it without outside assistance. Yet another roadblock on his pathway back to financial Eden. WTF moment number 4, uninvited guest. Saint vigorously searches for information on the safe in order to break into it, and this resourcefulness pays off when a locksmith is dispatched to personally gain access to the vault. In the midst of the unsuspecting workers' efforts, the two men are interrupted by another junkie secretly inhabiting the house. Saint tries to relieve the junkie's suspicions, only to be forced to kill him in front of the locksmith, who will refer to as Miguel henceforth. Saint then promises not to harm Miguel so long as he opens the safe without questions asked. WTF moment number 3, monster cemented. Miguel finally cracks the safe, which further takes Franklin down the darkest of paths upon learning the amount left in it. $12,000 to be exact, which was ironically the price of his first brick, and sold by extension, to get into the game. Maniacally laughing at the tragic irony of his circumstances, Franklin agrees to allow Miguel to depart with all of the money, getting his full name in the process. Shedding tears amid Miguel's plea for his life and family situation, Saint releases him with the money in pocket, only to kill him moments later. This cements two things: his final descent into being an outright monster, and his despair in the case of recovering any semblance of his stolen fortune, which was over the minute Teddy decided it was back in 510, if we're being honest. WTF moment number 2, on the run. 2 years following Franklin's tragic descent and the fall of the Saint family, Tony Marino surprisingly pops back up with another DEA agent. The two visit a ranch on the outskirts of the city, searching for a fleeing Louis Saint, who's been using the name Carla Huggins to hide from law enforcement. Though covered by the mixed rancher couple, Louis is depicted in hiding, covering her mouth in order to evade a certain jail sentence. This fate, much like Franklin's, is worse than a speedy death, as Louis once had the world at her fingertips and, similar to her nephew, squandered it in the name of greed, losing the person she loved the most and everyone else in the process. I wonder if that self-worth cup is full now. And WTF moment number 1, a tragic end. 3 years following the fall of the Saint family, Leon returns to visit his oldest friend at his former home. The once magnetic Franklin arises from the shadows of his bleak home, literally a shell of his former self, visibly shocking Lee by the unfortunate sight. What we witnessed slowly taking shape in the aftermath of Teddy's death and his lost fortune has fully come to pass, as Franklin's appearance and home are the best definition of decimated. Unbathed, unkept, and unbothered, Franklin takes Leon on a walk through his former hood from the alley in order to avoid the city and their repo team from inevitably seizing his home. The two former comrades catch up on their respective lives, including Wanda's current music industry endeavors, which will be further fleshed out in the upcoming spinoff, and the status of Veronique and her son with Franklin. After a beautiful nod to John Singleton's first classic, Boys in the Hood, Leon attempts to enlist his once brilliant friend for a virtuous legal venture that would help free the innocent who couldn't afford legal counsel. However, true to form and fully given up on life, Franklin avoids the request in exchange for liquor money, further crystallizing his current, hopeless fate in the eyes of Leon. Drowning his troubles in the bottle that's become his new safe haven, Saint updates Lee on his Cold War with the CIA before the city finally arrives to seize his home for unpaid property taxes. Accepting his nomadic future, Franklin proclaims his freedom now that he's lost his final link in the chain of life, and sadly adds how proud he is of his estranged best friend. The heart-wrenching scene ends with the two going their separate ways, both having made oppositional choices in life, one to continue the freedom of his people, and the other moving only towards the freedom of himself. Some lingering thoughts before we end today's video. The beginning of the entire Snowfall saga sees Franklin stopping neighborhood kids from robbing the ice cream man. When questioned by his homies about the police-like actions, Franklin drops this classic quote: "They gotta learn, that ain't how America worked." The game behind this saying is that nothing is given freely in this country, and if you choose to take what's yours, there are consequences to such a choice. Franklin, in this light, was a walking contradiction. He believed in the American dream and had learned that it was achieved by breaking their rules and making your own. However, as he began losing more ground in that dream, he defaulted to the belief that things should be, in fact, given when faced with the situation of lack. He demonstrated this during his fallout with Louis and later with Leon. In both cases, he tried to take what didn't belong to him, justifying it by not having what he felt was his by right. By doing this, he subverted his own wisdom, because as he once prophetically stated, that ain't how America worked. While we're on Saint being a walking contradiction, he had an interesting moment with Detective Stern after Cissy's admission of guilt at the courthouse. Franklin referred to Stern as being a, quote, Uncle Tom, for working within a system built on destroying the lives of Black people. But if Stern is a sellout due to his occupation, what does that make Franklin? Sure, he chose to go against the status quo by getting to the money on his own terms, but the main trick is that he undoubtedly destroyed more lives by being the Ray Kroc of the crack cocaine business, revolutionizing the distribution of the soul-snatching drug, and ultimately decimating his entire community in the name of greed. Way more people who look like Franklin were destroyed due to his former actions than were by Stern's occupation, even as controversial as it was to be a Los Angeles police officer in the 1980s. So who's the real Uncle Tom? And who's projecting that image in the name of fall revolutionary idealism? The aforementioned fall revolutionary idealism, which is commonly referred to today as fake woke, is something that governed Saint's actions and detached him from the destruction he was causing due to the benefits that accompanied it. The tragic irony in this fleeting logic is that Leon was everything Franklin thought he was. Franklin figured that by getting money by any means and being Black while doing it, that it was a win for Black people at large. However, Saint proved in the end that he was never for his people, only out for money. Leon had money, but preferred his people over riches. Though still dealing drugs, he took care of his collective, overthrowing Dion as a display of this dynamic once seeing them terrorized under his reign. Saint's initial motivation was to get from under the thumb of the regime, i.e. the American social order, and bring his people along with him. However, the money sidetracked him from this aim the richer he got. This is what his slain friend Kevin highlighted way back in Season 2. Though Kevin's actions were emotionally based and erratic, after assessing Franklin's full journey, his position was accurate. Franklin abandoned his own people. He was going to betray Oso, his mom, his wife, Leon, and everyone else in the name of that money. It's the main trick of the devil and the beautiful tragedy of his character. Another hotly contested idea in the days following the finale was that of freedom. Once broken, destitute, and left with nothing, Franklin asserted that he was finally free from all of it. Many took this as a sign of subtle victory from our series lead, as if his suffering wasn't in vain because he found some level of peace in it. Nothing could be further from the truth. A genuinely free person doesn't require daily, physical numbing in order to maintain liberation. If anything, the drugs keep one in sort of an invisible prison, the kind where the bars are made of deceptive iron that gives a person the illusion of liberty. Franklin wouldn't be the first nomad to walk away from mainstream society with this perspective. Living in the city of Chicago myself, I've heard personal stories from many homeless men and women, and the one constant throughout their narratives is the concept of freedom. One man even brazenly stated that he desired to stay homeless due to the pressures of modern society. We witnessed Sam from Raising Canaan experience a similar fate. Once a flourishing accountant turned homeless junkie, his new reality replaced his old, giving him a distorted view of freedom. Similarly, Franklin shared such a view so long as he controlled it. For as he stated upon losing his final earthly possession, freedom my way, not yours and not theirs. When Franklin discovers Veronique's treachery, notice how everyone disappears around him. It magnifies his disbelief in what his life was becoming before his very eyes. Franklin told her during their last meeting, "Remember what I said to you on the bluff that day? People I loved told me that they had my back and then stabbed me in it. But you see, the thing is, all those people today, they're all gone." Saint was essentially threatening his lady with excommunication, or worse, if she dared cross him. He lost her at that very moment. And lastly, there's an ongoing conversation that Cissy ruined Franklin's life by pulling that trigger. This rhetoric completely absolves Saint of accountability for his chosen fate. Through her actions, Cissy accepted responsibility, but Franklin never did. And this is the pride that consumed him, as highlighted by the Kendrick Lamar song played at the end of the episode. Franklin believed that Cissy desired physical freedom, something he alluded to when trying to get her to sign over the house. But to the contrary, Cissy knew that there was no outrunning her karma, and the consequences of her actions, not only shooting Teddy, but aiding her son in his criminal endeavors in the first place, had to be answered for. This is why she hung her head during their final meetings. Cissy understood the great universal law that every action has an equal and opposite reaction/consequence. Franklin, on the other hand, refused to acknowledge this. Cissy never responded to Franklin after the event because she saw what he was becoming, his father's worst demon, reincarnated. There's honestly so much more left to say, but this video is running out of the space to discuss it. But there will be more Snowfall content analyzing this brilliant conclusion, so please stay tuned. And that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching today's video. If you liked today's video, go ahead and drop $1 on that Cash App for us, hit the like button, share it with your friends who are fans of Snowfall, and subscribe for more content such as this. This is Rudy P. Magic of Rudy P. Magic Beats, and have a blessed one until the next one. Peace, y'all.